The Honourable Dr Nick Smith.
Mr Chairman, firstly, can I welcome the broad support across the Parliament through the committee stages for this bill, briefly summarise the key provisions in these committee parts, and then just briefly speak to the SOP in my name. Firstly, this bill does 5 important things. Firstly, it requires smoke alarms in all tenanted properties by the 1st of July this year. That's the priority for the bill. And that is expected to save 3 lives per year. Actually, 75% of the fatalities that occur in fires in New Zealand are in tenanted properties. They are higher risk, and this bill provides the regulating making power that we have in line to bring that provision. The government's particularly keen to get that provision in place as per the requirements in this committee stage by the 1st of July, because we all know those fire risks are greatest during the winter months. The second key requirement of this bill is a requirement for all homes to be insulated progressively over a period of 3 years. I do want to note that during the second reading stage there was some debate about the number of lives that would save. And I do want to correct, at that time I said the figure was 23 lives per year would be saved as a consequence of the provisions. Actually, that was on the basis of a sample size of 30,000 homes. Actually, it's 180,000 homes. And so my ministry has come back to me and said, actually, the insulation provisions in this bill are expected to save 129 lives per year. They are very substantive, they are important, and I welcome the broad support for those. The third provisions in this bill toughens up the capacity for the ministry to actually be able to enforce the existing standards. We have housing regulations. They cover issues of heating, of electrical, of ventilation, and all of those things. The problem is not that the regulations aren't there, the problem is actually a matter of enforcement. And what this bill does is create the mechanics and the law to enable my ministry to actually go after those relatively small minority of slum landlords and ensure that those existing regulations are enforced. The fourth changes in this part is around retaliatory notice. I'm sure and a number of MPs have noticed the issue that where a tenant does choose to go to the Tenancy Tribunal and seeks to have an application of those housing regulations in force, there's a risk that the landlord just gives them notice. The provisions in this bill extend the period by which we can take a retaliatory notice application to the tribunal and the powers for that to be resolved. And then the last and the fifth useful part of this Tenancy Amendment Bill is to provide for abandoned tenancies. Nobody wins from sitting vacant for months. And as a consequence of the fast-track mechanisms in this bill, it will improve that. Now, the SOP in my name, number 172, does make some amendments that I wish to make plain as to their intent and what they do. The first of those is in respect of the enforcement orders that are required in respect of the requirement to fix a property, and it's making plain that those orders include those important new insulation and smoke alarm provisions. The second is an issue that has been debated, and we want to make absolutely clear that anybody upgrading the insulation of their property before the deadline of the 1st of July 2019, just 3 years, and I remind Mr Little, who's in the House, that is a substantially faster program of insulating houses than what is provided for in his own bill. What we're making plain with the SOP is that any insulation work has to be done to the 2008 standard. That is, if you're a landlord and your property isn't insulated at the moment, you can't whoop in and get some 1978 insulation and pretend that meets the requirements of this bill. The SOP makes it absolutely explicit. Any insulation work has to be done to the 2008 standard. The last point I'd like to make is the government is not intending to support the Green Party amendments. It goes too far. Let me give a practical example. It would be illegal to rent a home if it did not have visibility strips under the Green Party's SOP. Yes, we think things like insulation, like smoke alarms are right. But I do note that the Green Party's own officers do not meet the visibility strip requirements that she's imposing on others. we on the government benches say, don't put rules on others that you're not prepared to comply with yourself. Exactly the same I have to say when I check these standards against my own private home. They do not meet them. We need to focus on those things that are the basic legal requirements, and that's what the bill does.
Andrew Little.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. I'd like to take a moment to address